A crisis is a result of when many different streams of activities converge in one place at the same time. And that's what happened. And so we have this thing we cannot control. I'll write this down also. You are always in control of your mentality and your thoughts and your mind. You are also always in control of your perception of what's happening. Now, you cannot control the hurricane, you cannot control the cyclone, you cannot control the tornado. You cannot control what we call a crisis. But what you could control is how you think about it. The word perception here is important. Whatever you perceive a thing to be, that is very important. So here's a statement I want you to remember. This is the power of your thoughts and your words. When you enter a crisis environment, you have to be very careful to control your thoughts and your words. Number one, and these have to do with the power of your thoughts and words. Number one, whatever you call or label a thing, that is what it becomes to you. Whatever you call or label a thing, that is what it is to you. You control what you name a thing. For example, you call your shoe a shoe, and so you treat it like a shoe. But I actually call it a dead cow. This podium that I'm standing at, you call it a podium. It's actually byproducts of oil. Plexiglass. Whatever you call a thing, that's what it is to you. Number two, whatever a thing is to you controls your response to it. And that's why what you call it is so important. You determine your behavior in life by how you label things through life. This is true about everything in life. Whatever you call a thing controls your response to it. I remember Jesus Christ running into a crisis one time. He had a very good friend. Matter of fact, one of his best friends was named Lazarus. You remember the story that he was in another city and someone sent a message to him that Lazarus was sick. Now you may find that Jesus' words kept on contradicting their email. They kept sending these emails to him. One of the emails said, Lazarus is sick. Jesus says, the sickness is not unto death. Then they said, Lazarus has taken worse. He said, he will be okay. Then they said, Lazarus is sick unto death. He says, he is going to be all right. And then they send the final message, Lazarus is dead. And Jesus said, he is not dead, he is asleep. Now why is that important? They said he's dead. He used another term. He's asleep. If someone is dead, you can't really awake them. But if you say someone is asleep, then you've changed your response to that person. And what he was really dealing with is trying to teach us how to speak, how to think. His response, therefore, was, he's asleep, and then he says, let us go and awake him. That's what he said next. Now, you know, his response is, let's go, because what I call it is what it is. What do you call when you lose a job? Unemployed? Well, if you feel unemployed, then you respond to that is, I ain't got no work. Which means I don't have any source of revenue, which means that I cannot handle my life, which means that therefore I am depressed, and therefore my response to life is, I give up. But you can call losing your job something completely different, like the Japanese would call it. The word for crisis in Japanese and Chinese is opportunity. So when you fire a Chinaman, he calls it opportunity. Now, if something's an opportunity, that means you take advantage of it. You don't let it take advantage of you. See, so what you call it controls your response. Number 3, controlled perception is not denial of reality. This is very important. What we're saying is how we interpret this is different. Our perception of this is from a different culture. We from the kingdom culture. Case in point, the Apostle Paul lived a very calm, controlled life. And his control came from how he perceived everything. Let me quote one of his statements, which I love. Paul says, all things work together for my good. Now, how do you disappoint a man with that perspective? That means I have been sent to earth under an assignment, and the guy who sent me controls everything, including the hurricane. There are 2 animals in the Bible that God identifies himself with. One of them I think would be a good one to remember right now, and that is the eagle. Now, eagles are amazing creatures. When an eagle sees a storm in the desert, it actually flies toward the storm. Why? Because an eagle is the only bird that uses a storm to rest. Why? Because the currents of the wind in the storm lifts the eagle higher, and he uses it to glide and rest. For hours, he just rides the storm. Sometimes you read in the Bible, God rides the storm. What it means is, when you are in the kingdom of God, you interpret a storm as an opportunity to go higher. So my perception is nothing bad can happen to me, because in my kingdom, bad is controlled by a good God. You put me in a fiery furnace, he makes me inflammable. You put me in the lion's den, he gives me a soft pillow to lay on. Even crucifixion turns into victory. You use death to kill death. How do you perceive controls your response. And number 4, crisis is only and simply a change in the environment that demands a new, unscheduled response. For example, you have habits in your life that you are controlled by. You go to work in the morning, you come home in the evening, you do certain things, you get paid on the weekend, or you get paid at the end of the month, and you use your money to do this and to do that, and you got this kind of a life schedule that you are on. Now here comes a crisis, bam, and you lose your job. Now wait a minute, I still got to wake up Monday morning, but now the way I used to schedule my life has changed. So I have to respond differently. I didn't schedule to respond this way. I'm not used to this. So I have to learn a new way to respond. That's what crisis does. Crisis is good. It really is. Crisis introduces the end of traditions. There are things that you're so used to doing that only a crisis could break them up. Crisis demands a new response. What you used to do ain't working no more. 5 rather. Crisis is the source of creativity. Don't be depressed, or don't listen to the negative talk around you. You need to adjust your perception of this from the kingdom perspective. You are from the kingdom of heaven. You happen to live on earth at the moment, but your government is also on earth, living within you. And your perception of life must be from another culture. And the culture of heaven is, ain't nothing bad could happen to me. So I got to find the good somewhere in this thing, and I'm supposed to benefit from the crisis. Say amen. I'm not supposed to be destroyed by it, but rather elevated like an eagle by this crisis. You know, if you study the biblical characters, all of them were promoted after a crisis. All. Let's take, for example, Daniel, right? Daniel used to be secretary in the government. And then when they threw down the lines and he came out, they made him a stirrup. That means deputy prime minister. Joseph was a slave. When he came out of prison and interpreted the crisis for Pharaoh, he became deputy prime minister. When Esther, her entire people were about to be annihilated and killed, she took a chance and went into the crisis before the king and became a queen. Anybody want to get promoted? Your crisis is God's program for promotion. In other words, God don't want you to panic. He wants you to plan for elevation. So you got to think what? Creatively. You got to think differently. Now, that's why you have to be careful what we say.